Hello.
So, how are you?
I'm good, but I see you're in your new house.
Yes,
And
I
this is the
am.
first time we're recording with you in your new house. I just want to point that out.
We are in the new house. It looks different, but it is and I wanted to tell you this, I forgot. So like I was obviously having lots of anxiety, like selling the house, buying the house, moving in. I'm sure you heard it all. I just didn't really tell you like, "Hey, I feel this way."
hmm
And then like even with moving, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we got to move." And like I was just super stressed out about it, and then we got here and we spent like 2 nights here, and I'm like, oh, this is so peaceful and this is so refreshing. I'm just happy. I'm happy.
Is it quieter because you're kind of more in the countryside?
Yeah. Oh, it's so quiet. I mean, I can like hear because out here, my cat just finished opening the door. Um,
Welcome, Kat, to the podcast.
welcome, Rocco. Oh, and Nova. So anyway, a lot of people use like their four wheelers or their ATVs or like golf carts around here,
hmm
just going up and down the road. So you can hear that. But I mean, otherwise in the morning, I'm in the kitchen looking out over my window and there's like a backyard and like a cat. I see a cat, like a random barn cat, and just trees and grass. And it's just so
That's
calm.
so nice. It's so loud where I live for a lot of reasons. I mean, I'm living in I wouldn't say a bigger city, but I live near like a city center. And then on top of it, I'm not far from the airport. So we get a lot of noise here. It's not very quiet. So I remember when we would
Yeah.
visit Rob's parents when they were living out in the countryside, it was like crazy how eerily quiet it was if you went outside. You would just hear like little hums of nature and that was it, but so quiet. It was very nice.
Mhm.
Very nice.
Even listening to the birds is like, it's just so calming. And
You're
hold on one second. So this door down here doesn't shut. That's the problem.
Oh.
So I have like three boxes in front of it. But anyway, that is why my cats were never in the room while I'm working because I can't do that. But yes, you are in a little bit of a busier area and it is so different like when you visit the country or even like go out there compared to being I mean, I wasn't even in a relatively loud
Yeah.
subdivision. It was just like I could hear my neighbor talking through the wall. We were by an air base, so you could hear
Yep.
every single helicopter, similar to you being by the airport.
I love it. Hopefully we can get there someday. Be able to move out into some land far
Oh, you
away.
will. Probably down south, knowing you,
Hopefully.
but
That would be nice. I hate winter. I'm so over winter. I can't imagine spending another 60 years experiencing winter.
I know, like, people that just never leave and have I mean, I guess I can do winter up until, like, Christmas, and then after that, I'm
It's
like,
too long.
"'Kay,
It's too
goodbye."
long.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like you have something to look forward to and then Christmas hits and then you don't. February is absolutely the worst.
I don't know, January and March are super long for me. February usually goes by fast just because it's so short.
Yeah. January for me is much different because I have Rob's birthday, Isley's birthday, and Eleanor's birthday. So it's kind of like it's still kind of like a fun month in
Mm.
that way. But
We're opposite. Everyone has birthdays in February, and
hmm
there's, like, no one in January, so we're like, "Okay."
Speaking of Eleanor, she's been doing this thing. I'm like absolutely in love with it. Where unconsciously, well, let me back up a minute. When I speak to Eleanor, we give her a lot of questions. So we'll say things like, "Do you want to go outside?" And then she'll say, "Yeah." And I always respond with, "Okay, baby," or "Okay, sweetie." And she started this thing where she's like, "Okay," and she like yells it after I say it, or she'll say, "Okay, mama." And she like repeats it after me. And so she's been on this kick for, I don't know, a week or so where she's been doing that. And it's so freaking cute. And then she also started this thing where I say this a lot also. I'll do the outside example. I'll be like, "Oh, do you want to go outside?" She'll say yes. I'm like, "Okay, baby." She's like, "Okay, mama." And then I'll be like, "Come on." And then she repeats that and she's like, "Come on." "Come on, mama." And it's just so cute. I can't handle
Oh,
her. She's just, like, in this stage where everything she does is so goofy and cute. Like today, I need to send you the video, but today we were eating dinner and she was sitting in her seat and she was doing mama and like clapping and like singing the song and like clapping her hands, or she was going
oh.
mama, mama, and it was like so freaking cute. And Robert and I are just like, oh my god, everything she does we just like cannot handle it. Like I just love this stage.
Yeah, I'm liking it a lot too. Like just and not necessarily I don't know cuz Eleanor's a month older, but like everything that they've been doing kind of probably since after 12 months, it's just like oh, they're learning something new every day and it's so
Hmm.
exciting to like watch them and it's like funny the way they do things. So,
Yes.
oh, oh, that's so cute. Yeah, you need to send me a video of the
I will.
okay, mama
Yes, I need to get a
and the
video of that.
song. You don't have a
I
video?
I don't I like it. I don't know. I don't know if I do. Maybe Rob does. I don't think I do because it's so built in and natural. I notice it much more now that she's like
Mhm.
starting to repeat me. But like in the beginning, it was such a like natural thing to be like, okay, baby. And then she'd be like, okay, mama. And I just like lost it. So I'll have to try to I'll have to try to record that. But I got the end clip of her singing mama song.
Yes, I need to see that. Uh, yeah. Speaking of the fun things that they do, Axel is in daycare, and because he's in, I guess, because of the age that he's in, because he's how old are they? 14 months. Gonna
Hmm.
be fit. Yeah, 14 months. He's like in the infant room and like visiting the toddler room. So he started visiting the toddler room this week, and he did really good. She actually said like he slept the full 2 hours with everyone. He went outside. He just adapted super well. And I guess this is just the normal process. They'll start transitioning them over a month and then move them in there. So she said by June, but they told me that you have to bring shoes like for him because he goes outside now. So I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I don't even have actual walking shoes that he can like because
Yeah.
the other ones are like fabricy, so it's not
Yeah.
like you
That's what
can
we
go
have
outside
too.
with it. Yeah. And so she actually went to the store and got him a few pairs of shoes and he put his shoes on and he is like a walking machine now. Like,
Is he?
yeah, I'll have to send you this video. Like yesterday, he's just like one hand on the wall, just like walking with it. And then today, he was hanging onto my shirt, like not even like hanging onto it. It's just like he was just holding it and he's just walking. Like I'm like, "You're walking, buddy, like not
Uh,
even with me." So
yeah.
I was oh my god. And so she also bought him these cute Crocs, and every time he sees the shoes now, he just wants to put them on his feet. So he just keeps putting them
Mhm.
to his feet. So cute. So cute. And
Oh my goodness.
he's very much about like people's noses. So if you say, "Where's mama's nose?" just grabs it like really hard. So yeah,
Aw.
we're about noses and shoes over here. So
I wanna know what shoes you bought because I the problem is we have shoes that are walkable as hand-me-downs from Isley, but Eleanor's feet must have been much smaller, so she's fitting in, like, the 3 to 6 more fabric-y type of
mm,
shoes, and I think we have one pair that has more of, like, a thick sole on it that fit her, but it doesn't it's like it kind of looks like Vans. I don't know, it doesn't seem
mm.
like it's a good actual walking shoe, so I need to do my research on, like, what good walking shoes are.
Yeah, I honestly I didn't do any research. My mom just bought them, but they're heavy. They feel super heavy
Mm,
because we're used to like the cloth ones. But I had her take him because I don't know what size he was, but he's like a
yeah.
4. So, and he still has room to grow in the 4. But that was just like something with a thicker sole so he could like go outside or stand in,
Mhm.
that was
Yeah.
and I was just surprised how well he was able to even walk in them.
Yeah, he must be good to go because I would imagine them being heavier, he'd have to put more
Mhm.
effort into walking, and if he's just kind of, like, going, he's ready.
I know, he just needs to do it now.
Yeah.
Ugh, I can't believe he's gonna be walking soon. Oh,
Oh, it's
okay.
gonna be so soon. Ugh, good job, Axel.
I know, right?
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the Mom Era podcast. My name is Megan.
And I'm Alyssa.
today's episode, we're diving into a deeply personal topic. This is our journeys of navigating the challenges of conceiving our second child.
Yeah.
Yay. So we're both trying to conceive for baby number two, definitely on two different paths, but it's already proved to be just as emotional as our first.
Mhm. And challenging, yep.
hmm So we did discuss our experiences trying to conceive for baby number one. So if you haven't already, listen to episode 6, the TTC and emotional journey of infertility, and we talk all about that. Today, Alyssa is going to share her experiences with IVF and, of course, the resilience required to go through fertility treatment because I think you've had some unexpected twists and turns already. And then I'm going to talk about my recent experience with a miscarriage or a chemical pregnancy and the strength and healing that followed miscarriage, which is a heartbreaking loss.
Yeah. So join us as we explore our unique paths to baby number two, filled with hope, determination, and unwavering love, but probably a lot of emotions in this episode. So yeah, be with us. We debated sharing this information publicly, but in the spirit of solidarity and what we're hoping to do with this podcast, we really want to share the challenges that we're facing so that we can help others that are going through similar things in life. And so, with that, we've chosen to speak out and share our journeys. So, I can start. Ooh, so, no, what is it now? May? We decided, Austin and I, that we were going to start trying for baby number two once we hit January of 2024. And so, what that looked like is, well, for us, we were trying naturally for a couple months before starting the IVF process again, just because we knew that there is a lot of things that have to be done before you can even start the IVF process. So, in the timing that we were kind of going through initial next steps, and before we even reached out to get a consult scheduled, we had been trying naturally. And again, we were given the diagnosis. It is not impossible for you to get pregnant, but it is a very slim chance for you to get pregnant naturally. So, that hope that there is a slim
hmm
chance, I hang on to every single time.
Yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we were able to get on the schedule and have an initial consult in January, which we did. And there were some things that came up in terms of this discussion that I guess I didn't really fully understand in the beginning. And I know, Megan, I've talked with you about it. But now, at this stage of where I'm at in the process, I feel so much more knowledgeable of it. But at the point in time when we had this consult, I was like, okay, it's okay. Like, we'll figure it out. And so in our consult, we basically go over what is the next step. We have frozen embryos. And so then the doctor will recommend if we could do a frozen transfer, if he thinks we need to go through an egg retrieval. And at this time, we had 6 embryos. So of our 6 embryos, there were some that were missing. Okay, so let me describe what it is. So it's called PN in terms of like when an embryologist is grading an embryo. Something that they look for is the PN, but it's a pronuclear structure of the embryo. And so what that is when the egg and sperm fertilize, there is a PN from the egg and a PN from the sperm. So you should see in a normal embryo 2 PN within, I think it's the first 24 hours. I'm not sure, but they'll see, hey, there's 2 PN, and that means that an embryo has fertilized normally. Some people will see 3 PN, which means there's an extra chromosome sometimes. If they see like 1 PN, there could be lacking a chromosome, or they just didn't see it right away. Or there's 0 PN, where it can be considered fertilized abnormally, but it can continue growing. So there could potentially have been a 2 PN and they just didn't see it. So this is kind of like what came up with our embryos because 2 were normal, 2 were 2 PN, and 4 were 0 PN. And so at this time, we made the decision to do the PGTA testing, which is a genetic testing similar to the genetic testing that's done usually through the NIPT test or the Maternit
Mhm.
21 at 11 weeks pregnant. You can find out the gender. You can find out basically if it's a euploid embryo, which means it's normal, or an abnormal embryo. So, when we genetically testing this, we got all the results back. Basically, the final results were that we had four embryos that were good and normal, but they were the 40PN embryos. So at this point in time, it was considered a risk to move forward with a frozen transfer. So we had talked to our doctor about that. We talked to the genetic counselor. We dug in to it a little bit more. I did read on some studies, but again, very minimal studies on this 0PN.
Of course.
Prior to, I don't even know if it was a couple years ago, they did not transfer 0PN embryos because they were considered abnormally fertilized. So they
Mhm.
used to discard them. However, now they have seen that some will test normal and have become successful pregnancies. Very rare, but they have seen it.
Did
So
you
they
know but you didn't know it was very rare at the time, or you did?
I was just told it was rare.
Okay.
I didn't understand that it was like my doctor's seen it like once every 5 years or like less than 1,000.
Right, right. Rare and very rare can mean two completely different things.
Yeah. Like, I knew it was a risk, and I was under the impression that it just wasn't seen by the embryologist. But when I watched a video after this whole like, I watched a video later on in this process of how an embryo is fertilized and how quickly you see the 2PN, and I'm like, "Okay, well,
Mm,
it would be very weird to not see," like, it's just
right.
so obvious that you would see this. So we understood it was a risk. Yeah, and we did know it was rare, we knew it was a risk, we didn't know how rare it was right away. So, we moved forward with the frozen embryo transfer. Everything lined up in a way where I almost because of the timing in which I wanted to get pregnant, I wanted to, like, start the process right away. I didn't wanna wait 3 months after our consult to do the transfer. And I didn't want to go on whatever timing I had or was going to be set up. I was like basically calling every day to see if I could start next steps, doing everything. So it all ended up working out. And I did move forward with a frozen embryo transfer on March 27th. Immediately after the transfer, I had felt like super tired. I was very crampy, and that's normal after a transfer. But like the first 2 days, like I felt like, okay, like I'm pregnant, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
I just had a feeling like the first 2 days. And so I was like super excited about it. And then like the third and fourth day, I was like, these symptoms kind of went away. Not really feeling super tired, but like I still had such high hope, right? It worked perfectly fine with Axel the first time. So in my mind, like I was pregnant. And
Yeah.
so I started to test because that's how I guess early I tested with Axel. I started at like 5 days post 5 day transfer. So technically, with a frozen transfer or a fresh transfer, by the time you transfer, you're already 5 days, like 5 DPO. And so I waited 5 days post transfer to be 10 DPO, which is what you would normally do in a cycle because you're so close to your period. And that one was negative. And I knew at that point in time that my transfer did not work. It was very emotional because at the same time, I was also finding out a lot of people close to me or in my friendship group were getting pregnant. And so I really wanted to be pregnant with them, right? Because you go through
Mhm.
life, you go through these experiences together, and you want to do it at the same time. Why not, right?
Yeah. I mean, going through it the first time with you is super helpful, so
Yeah.
wanting that again, for sure.
Oh, yeah. And with IVF, right, I don't think I touched on this, but like you go to monitoring once a week, twice a week. You start estradiol pills, you're on estradiol patches. You have, everyone has a different protocol. But then 5 days before transfer, I had to take the progesterone and oil shots. And it was more progesterone and oil than we had to do before. So it was like 2 mLs of it.
Why more?
I think because your body's more prepped in terms of ovulation and when you do a fresh transfer versus a frozen transfer,
Okay.
because they like have your eggs ovulate I that was just their protocol. I don't know. I asked and that
Yeah.
they just said that's what the protocol is. So I'm still doing these progesterone and oil shots. I'm testing negative day 5, day 6, day 7. I'm telling you all of this as it's going
Mhm.
on. And I'm just like, I'm super upset, right? Because I wanted it to be a surprise to my family. I wanted that element of, oh my gosh, surprise, you're pregnant. And I had it all lined up because I had basically, I felt like I forced my timeline. And when I kept seeing the negative at like 11, 12, 13 DPO, it was upsetting for me, but I still had hope. And that
Yeah.
stupid hope, like I had gone so far to where I had told my mom and my sisters because I needed that support system because I knew that it didn't work. Because with Axel, I was like getting a die stealer at this point, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And then I didn't test. I was so proud of myself. I didn't test over the weekend.
I don't know how you did that.
I had called and said like, "Can I just come in for a pregnancy test on Friday instead of waiting till Monday because I don't want to take the progesterone and oil shots if I don't have to." And they said, per the protocol, you could have implanted late. We can't risk that. That would be unethical. You have to wait until your Monday pregnancy test. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I just said, I'm not going to test. And I waited till Monday. And I waited and waited for the call. And I think it was like so close to them closing. It was like 30 minutes before they closed. And I was like, hey, like, can you give me my pregnancy test
Yeah.
results?
Come on.
Like, it's like almost 4 o'clock. I was there at 7 and they called and they said, "Yep, unfortunately, it was negative. For next steps, you'll have to schedule a consult." And like, I just like broke down like in Austin's arms because I knew it wasn't positive, but
Mhm.
I like hearing it from someone else. Like, okay, so all that money, all that testing, everything you went through, and like you don't have a baby, you're not pregnant.
I know, and it's so hard because we talked about hope, like, throughout the whole process that
hmm
I would say throughout this whole time this is happening for you, and like, "Don't lose hope, don't lose hope. There's always hope," because the thing is there is until there isn't. You know what I mean? It's hard to like put into words that feeling of like, okay, yes, maybe it's still going to happen and just some circumstance happened late. And it's just so hard to then hear no.
And there's so many other scenarios that you've heard, like, oh, this person like you know, tested positive like 10 days after their period was supposed to
Yeah.
start or things like that, like crazy things that happen.
Did you
And
like Google like crazy and read all these different stories and they're like, oh, there's somebody that had it be a positive success story?
yes, I was literally I found this study on 0 PN embryos and there was 3 of the 4 that were positive pregnancies and I think 2 live births or maybe it was the 3 because they were saying it was like a 75% chance of it happening because it was genetically normal and it had 0 PN. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, but that was one study of like 300 people.
Yeah.
Like, and so
Yeah.
I was clinging on to that one study, and even when after I watched that video of how an embryo, like, like, it is literally like the sperm, the egg, and then one circle forms and the other circle forms, and that you can just see 2 circles, and that just means that's 2 PN. And, like, that then to me, I was like, "Oh my gosh," like, I thought it was something specific that the embryologist had to see, like, in super detail, but it was just 2 circles.
And it's hard because I feel like the medical professionals never want to really say this could not happen for you or it's not going to happen even though the risk is high and the chance is low. And so you go into it thinking, "Oh, there is this chance,"
Mhm.
which absolutely exists, but it's such a small percentage. And so I feel like it's hard because I feel like sometimes you're not getting the full picture necessarily. And you felt that way, right?
Yeah, and I will say that my doctor did sit down. Okay, mind you, it was at the final appointment where he said, "Everything looks great. You're set for transfer next week, but this is a risk. Are you sure like you're really comfortable?" Like basically giving me the like, "Hey, this is a risk. It's very rare, blah 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 blah." And at this point, I'm like, I'm already doing all, like I'm ready to go.
Right.
So, um
Yeah.
I from that understanding, I just understand it was rare and it was a risk. And then we had a follow-up call, and in that follow-up consult, which we were very lucky to get like pretty quickly after we found out it was negative, basically the recommendation is to start all the way over with a brand new egg retrieval, and to then get better embryos that have 2PN. Axel was a 2PN high graded embryo. He was a fresh transfer, so we didn't know if he, was a normal embryo or not because we didn't test him. And so in that conversation that I had with the doctor, I was in full on like, okay, we're going to try one more time, frozen transfer. And if it doesn't work, we'll, do an egg retrieval.
Mhm.
And he was really pushing back, like, hey, like, I've only seen this once every 5 years. Like, less than 1,000 people have live births with like less than 1,000 embryos I've seen. He's like, because normally we stay away from the 0PN. And I'm like, well, kind of wish I would have known this before.
Yeah, yeah, that's additional information that definitely changes the word high risk.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I would give it my doctor did go over, that it was a risk. Did I ask extra detailed questions and dig into it further? No, but I also didn't have that full understanding until I looked at to it on my own, and then I asked him more questions after it failed. And so the recommended highest chance to give us a pregnancy is to do a new egg retrieval with a fresh transfer. Looking forward to that.
Oh gosh.
So,
but but at least I said this to you before, but at least now you are fully informed. You know what the best next steps are. You've been through it once, so you know what to expect. It's not all new. Maybe that's worse. Is that worse? Knowing what to expect?
I I think what I yeah, I guess because I just really did not like the egg retrieval process. During the egg retrieval process, you're basically, taking these hormones to like stimulate your follicles, and you're getting super bloated to the point where I don't even think I fit in my pants before we did the egg retrieval because it's just so bloated and so like uncomfortable. It kind of feels like when you're normally bloated after you eat something, and it's like a times two. Like it's just
Jeez.
stronger and uncomfortable. And then obviously I didn't know going into the egg retrieval that you're like super uncomfortable for like 2 to 3 days after, like in pain.
Mm,
And so they had said it wasn't that bad. And so then I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. And then I'm like, okay, now I know it's painful.
yeah.
So
Can you take like painkillers? Does that help?
I think they'll give you some if
Mm.
you request it. I mean, honestly, like Motrin and Tylenol are fine, but you also want to be careful during that time because they take them out and then 5 days later they put the embryo in you. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, they only have specific things that you can take.
Gotcha.
Um, that's kind of like where we're at. I think I was super upset because I am in the place where a lot of the people that had babies when I first had my baby or had their baby before me, are like having a second baby, and like I want to do it with them, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be behind. I wanted a close in age children, and Austin and I decided we were ready. So now it's like, okay, decided this in January. It is now May.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a long process, but that is with infertility regardless. So,
Yeah. It is. I feel that too. I feel like I kind of set a timeline for myself in hopes of conceiving a second child. I thought I would have by now, and I haven't. And I feel similar as you, where it's just like, I think we're both the same, where we're like, we want this, we want it now.
hmm
Like,
yeah.
and I want it the easiest way possible. I just want it to happen. But you'll have to fill us in throughout your journey, whatever you feel like comfortable with, obviously, as you go through this. You are probably one of the strongest women I know, having to like go through all of this. You handle it with such grace. And I feel like there's so many people out there that can like look to you having gone through this. I mean, you're so knowledgeable. Every time I talk to you, you like, you I don't know, you could work in this field now because you know everything. But baby number two is coming. It's gonna happen.
hmm And I after we went through this process, right? Like you feel like you have so much more control when it comes to IVF because you have a good chance of it happening, but like it's very much like everything has to line up, right? So you're controlling the whole entire situation and your body. And so then when it doesn't happen, it's like, okay, like I can't control it. And so I think I've been doing really good recently with just accepting that I
Mhm.
can't control it. It's going to happen the way it happens. Even like now, like we would call, I think soon to like kind of start the process. And it's like, I have to wait for the authorization documents to be in and everything to be okay. But it's not my timeline anymore. It's
I
not my
know.
timeline. It's just gonna happen the way it happens. And
Mhm.
I am accepting that because it just gives me a little bit more peace than trying to
Yeah.
like call and control and make sure I have my schedule and everything. Cause that's a lot.
Yep. Only worry about the things you can control.
Yep. Why don't you share your story with us, Megan?
Okay. Um, well, Rob and I knew we wanted to have two children at minimum. Two children at minimum. We wanted to wait to conceive a second child after Eleanor's first birthday. That was our doctor's recommendations. And after having a C section, I didn't want to. I didn't want to play around with any of that. So it has been 3 cycles of us testing LH, us baby dancing during the high fertility days, and obsessing over pregnancy tests. Like,
Yes.
I need to learn from you and maybe let off that a little bit because
Oh, it's hard.
it's
I
so
mean,
hard.
there was one where I thought I saw a very, very, very faint line, and I was like, "Austin, look, look, look." Like, I just kept
Yes.
staring at it for 25 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
There was no line there. There was nothing.
Oh, I feel that to my core. Well, the third cycle did prove to be both happy and then sad. So, to preface, my husband and I almost didn't try that cycle because it would have given us another January baby. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a lot to have Christmas and then to have all those birthdays in January. Rob,
Mhm.
Isley, Eleanor, baby number 2. I was like, you know, I don't know if I want that. But ultimately, we decided to because it didn't really matter. We were like, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. Our family is going to work out. It's going to be fine. And for me, I was like, I don't know how long this is going to take. There's so many unknowns that I just didn't want to skip a cycle. But of course, this is what happens this cycle. You're like, oh, whatever. We honestly really didn't even like try that hard. I tested LH like maybe the day before ovulation and the day I ovulated. So I was like really lucky to honestly catch it because I ovulated early. I usually
Mm,
ovulate like day 15 ish, give or take. It was like cycle day 11, I think. So it was very early. So we really only baby danced on like ovulation day, maybe the day before, if I remember correctly. But yeah, as always, after that, I was testing for pregnancy religiously. I started at 8 DPO, I believe. So 8 days past ovulation. And I know what everybody is thinking. It's too early. 8 was always the sweet spot for me. Like if I tested any earlier than that, it felt too early. But like 8, I feel like you could maybe get a positive.
maybe.
But I couldn't
I always tried to pull that till 10
till
because I
10.
was like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's so hard
it's
though.
very hard. But of course, it was negative, and over the course of the next few days, I continued to test. It's kind of funny because on 12 DPO, I did that thing where I talked about in our trying to conceive episode where I pulled an old test out of the garbage and re-examined it. Do you remember when I talked about that? How sad? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So I did that, and I noticed on that test there was a really, really faint line, like a line I hadn't noticed previously, clearly, and just like threw it in the trash can. And that was my morning test. So knowing it could have been an indent line or it could have been a positive pregnancy test, I decided to test again. And my mom was over that day. It was the night that she was spending the night. So I tested and I brought the test down for her and Rob to also look at. And you could clearly see a very, very, very faint line. And I ended up sending
There
it to
was
you.
actually a line there.
Yes. Yes. There was actually a line. It wasn't an indent. sent it to you. I was like, "Oh my gosh." And you're like, "What DPO?" And I'm like, "12." Which I feel like was its first red flag. Eleanor at 12 DPO was so dark. Very, very dark.
Mhm.
There was no question as to whether or not I was pregnant. So immediately I was like super happy because, I've been wanting this. I've been wanting it, we've been trying for a couple of months now. I've been like waiting for January so we could start trying again, you know? But I also was filled with like a lot of anxiety. And this is just how my brain works and my body works because we have a lot of unanswered questions that I need to resolve. And they're not unanswered questions that are like contingent on whether we should have another kid, just more or less something that we need to figure out before the next baby gets here. Like we have 3 bedrooms, but I work out of one. So then it's like, where am I going to work in the future? And just, I like to have those things in order to make me feel better. And so I immediately felt that, which I felt guilty about because I was also very, very happy, but I was also feeling this like fear.
Mhm.
So I tested again the next day at 13 DPO, and the test was still faint. And I was using the pre-mom tests at the time, and I decided to use my last digital clear blue from when I conceived with Eleanor. I had some clear blue tests, and it did say pregnant on it. So I was like, "Oh, we're good," because you have to have enough for it to like detect that. Those are like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the ones. So I was like, "Ah, I'm pregnant." So Rob and I decided to tell his mom. My mom already knew. Our moms are our biggest support systems. And of course, we bring them in early. I don't even think we brought them in early last time, but we didn't bring them in this early last time. But more or less, they're our support system. So if it was going to be good or bad, like they were going to be there for us regardless. But I bought Eleanor, actually, I bought this a while ago. It was supposed to be my way of telling Rob we were pregnant, but I bought a shirt that said, for Eleanor, that says, "In my big sis era." But we ended up putting her in that and sending it to Rob's mom. So she was very excited.
Aw.
So because I was out, one, I ran out of like my pre-mom test because I was like at this point testing religiously. Rob kept walking into the bathroom being like, if anybody sees this, they're going to be like, what the heck is going on here? But I had to buy more tests because I was out. So I bought a bunch of tests and I continued testing, hoping to see a strong line progression. But every single test was very, very faint. This is where I started to like question everything. With Eleanor, it just was like a no brainer. I was positive, I was pregnant. I had a dye stealer a few days later. And so I didn't know what to do. I was Googling like crazy. I was on all of the like community boards. I was finding people in the same situations, and a lot of them were turning out to be chemical pregnancies, ectopic pregnancies. Some women did go on to have healthy pregnancies. So I was like holding on to that. And Rob, like I love Rob to death, but he's the type of person who, if I were to bring something that makes me anxious to him, like this scenario, for example, with the pregnancy tests, he's like, "We're pregnant." I read if it's a positive pregnancy test, it's detecting it, and you don't really need to have that line progression. You're pregnant. You need to stop testing. And he's doing his best to like alleviate my worry, but it doesn't really do that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It like
Yeah.
feels like I'm kind of in it by myself then, where I'm like the only one that's like really questioning it, kind of knowing what's going on. I know my body. I was trying to be hopeful, but I also felt a little off. I was experiencing a ton of back pain. It felt
Mm.
very similar to contractions in a way, but very mild. And I did also have some hip pain.
I was gonna say, just real quick
Hmm.
to add in, Austin kind of is similar to like how you were describing Rob. Like he'll like in that scenario when we were testing, he's saying, "Oh, it's just implanting late, babe." Like, and so then to me, I'm like, okay, the only person that I felt like understood was like you and my other friend because like they aren't in our bodies. They don't know what we're feeling. Like we just knew. Like I
Hmm.
had a gut feeling and
Yeah.
I knew it. but I still hung on to that hope because he was my support system and
Yep.
this is what he's telling me.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
No, same. I felt the same exact thing. I was like, I knew something was off, but I also had that hope. And then, the person I'm in this with is like, it's fine. So then I'm like trying to get myself there, but I just couldn't. What really annoys me about like the symptoms is every symptom is a symptom of pregnancy. It's a symptom of your period. It's a symptom of miscarriage, and they're all the same.
Mm.
So I really never know how to read symptoms, though the back pain, I don't remember having that when I was pregnant with Eleanor. Rob kept saying, "Yeah, you did have back pain," but I think it was when I was further along and I was just like pregnant.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember you having any back
No,
pain in
I
the
don't
beginning.
either. And it was kind of crampy but in my back. But all of that, I was like, this was all like during the weekend at this point, and so I knew I wanted to call my doctor on Monday just to see what I could do. I was new to this. I was really worried at this point that I was going to have an ectopic pregnancy and that it was going to be some type of emergency, and I just wanted to make sure I was listening to myself, taking care of myself in case if it was anything more serious. So Sunday, I believe, I did another digital clear blue that ended up saying not pregnant. All my other tests still had a very faint line. They did seem a little fainter than where I started, but it was so hard to tell because they were all just so faint. And then Monday at 18 DPO, I started my period. I still ended up calling the doctor to tell them my scenario. I was like still worried it was something. I didn't think I was pregnant at that point. At that point, I knew I was like starting my period and I wasn't pregnant. I just didn't want it to be a scenario where I was having an ectopic and it ruptured or something along those lines. So,
Or it caused any issues, yeah.
yeah, that there wasn't anything weird going on. So, I called and they suggested I do a test, a blood draw to test my HCG to confirm. My test came back at 4 MIU,
For
whatever,
HCG.
however,
Yeah.
I said MIU. I don't know what that means, but yeah, HCG. But basically, what I was reading is that anything 25 and above would mean you're pregnant, and anything 5 and lower is basically not pregnant. I don't know what it means if you're in between. Maybe you're
I think normally what I because I went down a rabbit hole reading like at what point in time can a test like fully
yeah.
detect your pregnancy and like really like for it to be like a full dark line it's like 15
Oh, really?
hcg, and so like when it's less than 15 it's going to be a lighter line. So that's how I also knew like there was like I would have had a light line of something at that point if it
Yeah.
had continued growing.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting you found that because I was looking for that information. Everything I read was just like the pregnancy tests, the levels they detect is high enough to where you are pregnant regardless of what shows on the test. And so every time I was like, oh, I'm good.
yeah, I think I dug into that with first response, but there's a lot of information on the Burden B website
Mm.
too. And I actually ordered some of their pregnancy tests because they're like even earlier than some of the pre
Oh.
mom and the first response tests. So I have them for next time.
Ooh. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You'll have to let me know how they are.
Yeah.
I have so many pregnancy tests right now because I literally went on a binge, so I don't need to buy
You
any
bought a
other.
bunch more?
I'm
Like
telling
when you ordered.
you. I went to Target. I was hanging out with my mom and I was like, I need to go to Target. And I literally picked up like 3 boxes. I think one of them had like 10 in it of like clear blue.
Oh my word.
So I have a lot. So I don't
You're
need to buy
dedicated.
any more.
Dedicated.
I'm just like, I don't know. I like to have a clear answer and know what's going on. And I didn't feel like I had that throughout this process. And I just kept hoping and hoping that I would test and it would be darker and everything would be fine. But of course, I had my period. I got the blood test. Everything came back negative, and I discussed with my doctor. So I did have a very early miscarriage, or what they call a chemical pregnancy. So A chemical pregnancy is a very early miscarriage that occurs shortly after implantation. So it's called chemical because it detects through chemical means, typically positive pregnancy test, sometimes even blood tests. But the pregnancy is lost before it can be seen in an ultrasound or lost before it can develop any further. And I heard what I was reading is a lot of times you have a chemical because of some abnormality in the what is it called?
The embryo.
Embryo, thank you. I'm like,
Yeah, and
is it a zygote?
I read about that. Well, a blastocyst. It's
Yeah,
a blastocyst, and they're an embryo too when they're
yeah.
frozen. But I did read because I went down that rabbit hole too. You can drop an egg every month that isn't like the full, has the full 23 genes, or the sperm that went into the egg could not have the full 23 genes that it has. That's usually can cause some of that too. But I mean, some people even get to like 16 weeks and have that happen because it's abnormal. So
Yeah.
that's really hard too when you're trying naturally because you don't know, like in IVF, if it's genetically normal, if the embryo continued to develop inside of you. So I think that's a very hard thing
It
to
is.
even go through because now I guess like I know I would go down like a rabbit hole of like, okay, like what's happening? Like, is there something else going on? It's
Mhm.
very scary.
Yeah, and that's one thing that Rob said. He was like, "I'm just glad it happened now and not further down the line because I just imagine it just would have been way harder to cope with had it happened, at 16 weeks
Hmm.
or any other time in the first or second trimester, or even third trimester. It would have all been like way more heartbreaking. Of course, I was very heartbroken. I was very sad. It's really amazing and crazy how attached you become. Like, I'm sure you felt the same way because you knew that you had this embryo in you, and I had this positive test, and I automatically felt very, very attached to this baby. And the only thing that really helped was kind of knowing that something was wrong and the relief I felt that I had an answer. And
Yes.
it wasn't relief like, "Oh, I'm not pregnant." Of course, it wasn't that. It was just relief of like, "Okay, I'm not pregnant. We have to start again." Like, it was just knowing what the outcome was, because it was really scary that 8 days where I was having these positive pregnancy tests, but no line progression and nothing was really happening, and I didn't know what was going on inside my body. So, there was definitely relief at that part. I think just I kinda mentioned, but just, like, being in that limbo
It's so
was the
hard,
most difficult, yeah. I just, like,
especially
think about it, it's so difficult.
especially with the way that our brains operate. I mean, I know you and I are very similar, and we're very much like, how can we solve the next problem? How can we plan ahead? And when you don't have that answer, or something was supposed to happen, but it didn't happen, having somewhat of an answer, even though it is a horrible answer and it's not the outcome that we wanted, it
Mhm.
is an answer for you to tell your brain, okay, you can shut up now. Stop
Yeah.
sending me down a rabbit hole. I
Yes.
need to move on. I can grieve, but I need to move on. And I felt so attached, just like you said. I knew the gender of the embryo that we transferred because we did genetically test it. So I think that made it worse. If I didn't know the
Yeah.
gender, I probably would have been okay, but it just like I, you know, like that's just a part of our family now. Like I just know that baby, we transferred a baby girl, that baby was still a part of our family and is not here with us anymore, but I still like refer to her as baby girl. So,
Yeah. Yeah, the attachment is real. I also like after having got my period. Again, that relief, it was huge. It was like, "Oh, I have my period. We're just going to move on. We're going to start again the next cycle." But then, of course, throughout my research when I was reading when some people did have chemical pregnancies and they had the same scenario as me, they were like, "Oh, my cycle wasn't back to normal for a few months." And I'm like, "A few months?"
oh my
That is
gosh.
not on my timeline. So I'm kind of still in the like, what's going on? I just started testing LH again, so for this cycle, so we'll see if it affected. My period really wasn't any different. I would say maybe it was a little bit heavier, but it lasted a similar amount of days. I can vary, but it lasted pretty similarly as before, so nothing weird there. So I'm hoping our cycle is just back to normal and I don't have to worry about that happening, but
Mhm.
we'll see.
Yeah, I will say after mine, my period was very heavy after the transfer to the point where I was like, "Hey, doctor, like FYI on this."
Yeah.
But my cycle was very different afterwards, and I did not, again, didn't have that issue or didn't notice that last time because I was pregnant. So because this was a failed transfer, I had started testing LH to see, like, when I ovulate. Normally I ovulate on day 14 religiously. My cycle is very, very consistent, and I didn't ovulate till day 18. So
Oh,
it was
wow.
very, very weird because usually by day 18, I'm already like 4 DPO. But yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how this natural cycle plays out before we end up in egg retrieval.
Yeah, I have this problem. I don't know if you do this when I test LH. I usually don't start testing because I know you're supposed to start once your period ends, but I usually don't start for a few days. And so I never know what my LH levels are after, like right after my period starts. And right now I'm testing in the 20s, 30s for pre-mom. And so I don't know if that's what I would test like right after my period. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's fluctuated at all between then and now or it's just following its normal. We'll see how it plays out. Have you tested right after pregnancy? Or sorry, right after
After
period?
this cycle, I did. In the beginning, when I first started testing like LH, I usually did, but mine is just so consistent. It's like I usually start day 10, and then like I get my peak day 13, it goes down day 14 morning, I ovulate. And so this one I had like low, 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 and then I had like a medium, and then I had another low. Like it didn't even go to like a high peak
Oh,
like I normally have.
yeah.
So it was very, very different. But
Interesting. Okay. We'll see what mine does. I'm just afraid I'm going to miss it, because I'm like looking for the same cycle or the same, trajectory that I normally see. And I'm just nervous that I'm not going to get that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking for, honestly. So,
well, it still should be low. I mean, and it's gonna slowly rise, and however yours, if yours stays high for a couple days, or if it peaks and then goes back down like mine. But usually after the period, it was like consistently low, like point
yeah.
0.1 or point 0.2. I'm 9 DPO today. I'm holding off. I'm just not gonna test until my period starts. Or I'm not gonna test until the day my period's supposed to start
How? How?
because
I want to be you.
I'm gone through infertility, and I just
I
every single
know. I
time I've done
know.
it, it's just not it's never been pregnant. I mean, I'll have
Yeah.
the hope that my period's not going to start, but I don't wanna have the hope that the test will be positive.
Yeah. You don't want to see that like negative. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Okay. Whew, that's
It's a lot.
feel like I gotta shake that off. Yeah, it's a
I
deep
know.
episode. Well, to lighten things up, what is your mom era this week?
Um, my mom era is pointing and, like, sticking our hand out and turning our hand like we're waving. We now like to point at things we want, and I don't know why, but the sticking out of the hand and waving it means we want something too. So, like, he'll be eating food, and then, like, he'll take a bite. I had gave him his little spoon, so he was eating with his spoon, and then, like, he saw that he didn't have anything on his spoon, so then he looked at me for more of what I was eating, and he just was doing this with his hand. I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." And then screeches. And then but he did point at Austin when he wanted some more mashed potatoes tonight, so we're pointing.
He's like developing his own communication
Mhm, mhm.
to communicate with you guys. It's cute. Yeah, Eleanor did a little bit of that before. She still kind of does it. Like for flour, she like does she points to her nose, like she wants to.
Smell the
Cause
flour.
yeah, cause my mom era is we're outside, and it's like I'm in my outside mom era because Eleanor wants to spend any and all time outside. She's obsessed with her water table. She's obsessed with flowers. She's obsessed with her little car. She's obsessed with the wagon and the bike and the whatever it is outside. She wants to be outside, but she loves flowers. And one of her signs for flowers is like pointing to her nose, which
Oh,
which is cute. But yeah, it feels nice that it's nice out and we get to hang out outside.
just being outside. Like Axel was outside at my mom's house the other day and he just looked like he was having so much fun. Just being in the sun, like being in the sun, being in the grass, being a kid.
And I don't want to say, yeah, and I don't want to say like, oh, I don't spend a lot of time outside in the summer, but I can say like the past few years I've honestly been kind of like a shut in and I just kind of hang out inside. And being a mom, I don't know, there's just this like rejuvenation of things I once found fun. And, being outside is one of them. She like obviously pushes us to do these type of things. She loves to be outside. It's really good for her. And so I'm enjoying being outside again. And I think it's just a nice little thing that's happening. I think it's been good for me to spend time outside. I remember I don't even remember when this was, maybe 2022, 2021. I don't know. I was working from home at the time, but I felt like I wasn't spending enough time outside. So I like would try to work outside
That's so
in my
hard.
backyard and I just like couldn't do it. I don't know, there was just something so lonely about it. Like it just felt like there was nothing for me to do. And now there's just like they said that like rejuvenation of all these fun things that are happening and I'm really here for it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm excited about this summer, especially now that we have like a nice yard and he can run around but I'm pretty sure I tried to work outside one time too. And like I would put like the lounge chair and then I'd go sit out there and I had a call one time with our manager and like I'm on the call, I have my headphones in, whatever we're talking, and she's like, "Are you outside?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm just sitting on my back porch." And but it was because the birds were so loud. Like
Yes.
it's like all I can hear is the birds chirping and I'm like, "Oh, okay, sorry."
But I used to have meetings all the time with people outside. So it wasn't like,
Yeah, people were always outside.
uh-huh. Yeah, and they never
But
felt
I
some
never
type of way
heard their
about it.
birds.
I know. Your dang birds are too loud.
Maybe the Microsoft Teams has gotten updated now where it gets rid of the background noise. Like you can't
Yeah.
hear people's dogs barking or anything anymore. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Mom Era podcast this week. We hope that our very raw and emotional journeys are helpful and help others going through these situations and these challenges. I think the best way for us to continue to be a support system and share positivity is to share raw stories. So check us out on Instagram at momera_podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.